first and foremost, I'd like to thank you for coming on the show. I greatly appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, excited to do it.
Awesome. So, I guess just to start off, like, where are you located?
So I live in Maryland. I've been born and raised my entire life. Moved around to a bunch of different parts of Maryland, but currently just the central DMV Baltimore area.
Got it. And so you train out of there and everything, compete out of there?
Yeah, so I actually just started traveling for work. So with your wife being a nurse, I don't know if you've heard about the whole traveling thing, but about a year ago, I started traveling as an X-ray tech. So
Hmm.
Um, I've just joined different gyms in this past year, and since starting my prep, I've in the hospitals in the areas that I work, I just joined gyms down there, and I stay there till my contract's up, and then I find somewhere new.
Yeah. So just to kind of for people that might not know, and I think I know what you're referring to, but the fact that there's just such a need for medical professionals, and
Mhm.
they're willing to pay a lot of money to have people just travel in and do their work. Is that what you're referring
Yeah,
to? Or
yeah, more or
okay.
less. A lot
Hmm.
of hospitals are having like manning and staffing issues, so
Hmm.
they utilize travel companies like the one I'm with to essentially bring in already trained professionals to just jump in, do the work, get started, and then they don't have to spend all the time and investment into someone new that they would hire.
Hmm.
That's not what they don't want to do, but for time effectiveness and patient care standpoints.
Right. So what do you attribute that to, as far as like that kind of need just all of a sudden coming up? Is it because of COVID, or like
I think
what happened?
so. I think a lot of people kind of got out of the field
Mhm.
because of everything that we all had to deal with. I think money talks. So
Mhm.
a
Of
lot
course it
of
does. Yeah.
full-time staff, like I once was, is now into like the whole traveling gig. So
Yeah.
a lot of that has to attribute to it as well.
Yeah, we were talking about it. There's a guy that I know, and his friend is a nurse, and he's in Hawaii, and it's like he's making bukus of money, and
Mhm.
then just doing what he loves, loving the climate, and that's what he does, just travel,
Yeah,
nursing. So
I have a friend who's doing that too. She's in Hawaii and she posts pictures all the time. I'm like,
yeah, that's yeah, those stories always make you be like, maybe
yeah,
I should get into something like
yeah.
that.
It's definitely like having a little bit of both worlds, like having a cool job and then being able to like travel and see all over the world. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So how did you get into like training? And I mean, you're obviously at a not you're not just training, you're also like at a completely different level. Now you're competing. How did that all come about?
So as a kid, I played sports. I mostly danced and soccer. And then in high school, I was on two different soccer teams. I competitively danced, and it was like every night of the week I had something to do.
Hmm.
And then when I got into college, I just kind of worked out, went to a gym. I didn't go to a 4-year school, so I didn't do any college athletics. And I just kind of realized, like as an adult, like there's not much to do unless you're playing college level athletics or you get into like professional athletics. And I mean, they have pickup leagues, and I would try and do that, but then I realized that they were more just people were hanging out and not really the competitive aspect of it that I like. So one of my coworkers' wives actually competed, and I was like, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I'm disciplined enough for it. And then a friend of mine in 2018, she was like, well, I've always wanted to compete. And I was like, really? Because I've always wanted to as well. I was like, why don't we do it together? And then we can motivate each other and hold each other accountable. So we found a local coach, and I prepped for my first show in 2018.
Mhm.
And then I stepped on stage, and it was just like a dance competition. I was like, stage lights, a sparkly bikini, and music. Sign me up. I got hooked, and I pretty much just started down that path since then. And I've since switched coaches and have made it like a really huge part of my lifestyle. And I've fallen in love with the process more so than show day these days. But that's just kind of how I got into it. And now I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah, one of the things that I was discussing with somebody just recently, they were asking me, well, like, it's it's so amazing. He said that you're so into this. It's kind of like I wouldn't expect you to be so into it for so long because I've been into like weightlifting and bodybuilding for quite a
Mhm.
while. And I basically explained to him like what you said was, which is, at a certain point, if you're into sports, you have like a fork in the road. Either you're good enough or you decide to pursue like a professional, avenue in whatever sport you're in, or you don't, and you just get, you get older and you just get a job and you just, live.
Mhm.
And so bodybuilding and fitness allows someone who's just an adult but might not be at like a professional level at other sports to
Mhm.
pursue that like competitive edge, that competitive career at like at any age, really. I mean, now they're talking about even bringing back, excuse me, the master's class. So it's like,
Mhm.
you're going to have people that are much older, they're still able to, perfect themselves and compete and have that I don't know how to put it, like that zeal, that
Mhm.
desire that kind of goes away once you start getting out of those areas and you just start working, the
Mhm.
life just starts kind of beating you up a little bit.
When I tell people all the time too, like my obviously it comes down to priorities, but my priorities, I mean, even when I was a teenager, like I've always been about eating healthy, working out, being in shape.
Hmm.
And so as an adult and kind of having that autonomy to choose what I do and when I do it, it's just become a priority. And obviously, there's a whole conversation about, oh, stage lean isn't healthy and this, that, and the other. I was like,
Right.
but ultimately, the process getting to stage when we're not talking about prep and we're not talking about extreme goals is essentially just healthy living. Like,
Right. Right.
it's
Right.
not a hinder to me because it is my life. And that's how I stay so focused on it and why I enjoy doing it
Yeah.
because it's just, I mean, it's a core value of mine, and this is just an outlet for me to
Sure.
express that.
Sure, that makes all the sense in the world. Part of it being is healthy living. And I think that's the other aspect, right? It's kind of like you get to do what you enjoy, but at the same time, you're bettering yourself all around, not just in this one sport, but like also just, your everyday life. People look at you, they're like, oh, you look healthy, you look like you're in great shape. And it's kind of like, well, I try to take care. The sport takes care of me, so it's kind of does
Yeah, and
both.
I know for like a lot of people, like, oh, I don't know how you could be that disciplined and weigh everything and measure everything. I'm like, I mean, if we really think about it, that's probably what people should be doing. Because I mean,
Right.
more so just extreme portion control. I was like, don't get me wrong, people don't believe me when I tell them I'm a huge foodie. Like when I'm deep into my off season. I mean, you can catch me at all of these little local spots that I love to go to. And when I go on vacation, I love to try
Right.
different foods and cuisines. And I was like, so I mean, yeah, it does look like sacrifice, but in
Mhm.
the long run, it's just portion control and kind of throttling where I should throttle. And then it has really gotten me to a point where now I can enjoy like the foodie things that I get to do in my off season because it's not every day. I'm not like, oh, what am I having for lunch? Oh, what am I having for
Right.
dinner? It has taught me to truly enjoy like the luxury of like going out to eat and really spending that time with family and friends and being in the moment and just enjoying that culinary experience.
Yeah, I used to work in a police department, and they always brought around like donuts,
Mhm, mhm.
and uh, and so like I generally wouldn't eat too many of them or anything like that. But this one time, this guy saw me eating a donut, and he's like, "Watching you eat a donut is like seeing a unicorn."
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not quite true. Like you said to that point, it's more like that I know when when I can allow myself to have something and when, that's not the best idea. And it's like
Yes.
if I can keep a good diet and portion control through majority of my, day or week, then having a donut here or something else there is not a big deal. But if you're an individual that your diet consists of, sugary, unhealthy stuff, yeah, like that, then you need to do something about
Mhm,
that for sure.
mhm.
So, and that's, yeah, I mean, to your point, that that's kind of how people are. They think that you're just starving yourself, but that's not the case, you know.
Actually, in most cases, I tell people, I'm like, I'm probably eating more than you, honestly. Like, if we want to break it down to calories, like, especially people who are like weekend warriors, like my girlfriends and stuff are like perpetual dieters. And then they're like, oh, you just restrict yourself all the time. I'm like, combined, I probably eat more than you every
Right.
single day.
That's
It's just
hilarious.
a different source. So,
Yeah. Do
people
they?
say that all the time too, like, oh yeah, you're not going to eat that. And I was like, well, I'm not right now, but I may in the future.
Did the girl that you excuse me, did the girl that you started your first show with, is she still competing as well?
So her last show was in 2020 as well. So it's funny, we weren't going to compete after 2018. We were like, oh, like we're in totally different seasons now. But then we ended up competing again together in 2020, just with different coaches. And she's actually taken a hiatus, and she's starting a family. She's due with her first baby in a few weeks. So
Oh, wow.
she's going to go and do the mom parent life. And I don't know if she'll get back into it or not. I guess it just depends on, how that avenue of her life goes. But
Yeah, it's weird because sometimes like you'll get that itch again, like you'll go away for a little bit. I was just talking to someone, and that's kind of what happened to them. It's like they went away for a little while, and then all of a sudden they got that itch again. It's like, well, they got right back into it. I actually think you messaged Milan as the one that I interviewed about that. Yeah, so that's what she was saying. She went away for a few years and then got that bug again. So I wouldn't be surprised if the girl that you're competing with, after she's done with her initial stages of raising a kid, gets that again. So.
Well, it's actually funny. So I just got into physician assistant school.
Oh,
And I'll be
awesome!
starting.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I'll be starting that at the end of the summer. So I'm slated to be done prep probably like June or July. It just depends on what happens with show placings and stuff like that. But regardless, I'll be done no later than I think it's like the first weekend in July. That's when Universe is. And then at that point, I'm going to go into an off season. But I was actually talking to a coworker yesterday because I was asked, are you going to take a hiatus? Are you going to do this while you're in school? And I was like, my focus at that point is going to be school. It's going to be a job. I was like, but I'm kind of looking forward to it. I mean, and I don't say that like I'm burnt out from doing it, because I love doing it, but I just think about how, sorry, that's my dogs. I just think about like how enjoyable of an off season I had last year for the last 2 years. And because I've fallen in love with the process, I'm like, I'm just really looking forward to giving myself a break. Because even though this past off season was 2 years long, it was literally when my coach said, I think it makes sense to go into an off season, I looked at him and I said, where do we start? And pretty much since the moment I stepped off stage in 2020 up until now and continuing the next couple of weeks, it has been like, I've got to build my upper body. I've got to get my calories up, got to get my cardio down. And while that's still going to be a focus, because I'm going to be forced to take time, I am just so looking forward to just having like a good solid 4 years away from it. Cause I think it'll help keep kind of like that fire lit. And I tell people too, and I told my coworker yesterday, I was like, I had such a productive off season the last 2 years. Like my projected stage weight is about 5 pounds heavier than when I stepped on stage 2 years ago. And I'm like, just imagine, I was like, that was 2 years of being off. Imagine the gains, for lack of better words, but imagine the progress that I can make in 4 years. Because regardless if, I step on a national stage and I win my IFBB Pro card or I don't, the consensus is probably going to be that I have to build size and build shape. I mean, I'm an amateur at this sport and obviously nowhere near Olympian conditioning. I was like, so having 4 years off isn't going to be a bad thing, because I can take the time I need to bring my calories up, get my cardio down, kind of like mess around a little bit, have date nights again, and really kind of like enjoy like what the meaning of life. And
Right.
then when I'm ready, I can come back, and if I stay as productive as I was, I'll come back better than ever. Whatever
Yeah.
that
What
next
did you what
level.
did you enjoy about last year's or last time you had the off season?
I enjoyed that I kind of it wasn't just a focus on I want to compete again. I want to compete again. I want to compete again. Like because I fell in love with that process, I was like, I enjoy getting my food up. I enjoy lifting heavy in the gym because,
Hmm.
like any fellow competitor would know, like you get to a point when you're prepping for a show that you just don't have the strength and the stamina that you did when you were deep into your off season. And I think when I first started competing, I went into it very like naively, very blindly, like my calories probably weren't where they should have been. I probably wasn't eating nearly enough protein. And so having the knowledge in my last off season to know like eating enough food, eating your protein, going to the gym, and then not having to stress about every single gram of macro that I have, it was just nice to have that and not obsess about when I'm going to step on stage again.
Yeah, I find it interesting that you said like you're enjoying the off season, and it sounds like you're the way you're describing the off season. There's some relaxation, but there's also, like you said, progress. And sometimes when people talk about the off season, they almost equate it to like when they hear that word off, they almost equate it to just not doing anything, right?
Yeah.
Like some people are just stop like training as hard, they
Hmm.
stop like getting their meals in, they literally just take off. But
Hmm.
really, the off season is meant for you to progress. So when you get to your prep, you'll have a better physique once shed the body fat, right? So get to that lean condition. So I mean, I think you've got the right, you definitely have the right idea, because it's like in 4 years of off season, I think you could really make
Hmm.
some serious progress, especially, in the NPC. It's like if you can edge out some other people, that aren't taking it as seriously, I mean, that's the way to do it, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people don't realize the importance of time off. Cause I know, like, for me, my first season, I was like, okay, I'm off. And my coach now is like, okay, well, I want to at least be away from dieting for a year.
Mhm.
So in my mind, I'm like, all right, year, 12 months, it's go time. But I learned after we prepped in 2020, I learned that that's not really what that means. Because
Mhm.
for me, I'm a natural athlete. So it takes me a lot longer to make progress. And you spend a good 3 to, if not 6 months, just getting back to maintenance.
Yeah.
And so, kind of what made me really think of my off season that way was my off season doesn't start until I'm at maintenance and when I can really
Mhm.
make progress. So, I think a lot of people forget that if you aren't taking the time to build your body, then you're just going to keep looking the same when you step on stage. Because
Right.
to me, the way I view off season, and I know a lot of like the new thing is calling it like improvement season because you don't take off. But
Right. Right. Mhm.
I'm like the truly your real work is done in your improvement season
Right.
because once you start cutting, I mean, there may be some a little bit of muscle protein synthesis happening because you're still lifting. I mean, I still lift
Mhm.
as hard as I can when I'm in prep, but
Mhm.
calorically, you're eventually not going to be bringing in enough to build muscle. So you should
Right.
never go into a prep like, oh, I'm just going to build to stage because the processes, the biological processes that our body does to build muscle, it does it with energy. When you
Right.
start taking energy away,
Yeah, and I think the strategies are different, right? Like it's hard, like you can't mainly anything in life, it's hard to have two different strategies working at the same time, right? It's usually like one or the other. Same thing I think goes for, competitive bodybuilding. It's like either you're building muscle or you're shedding fat. It's very difficult to do both. And like you said, I mean, like to a degree, you could say that, but in reality, when you're, when you're talking about like major progress, you can't do both at the same time. And especially if you're talking about doing it without any kind of performance enhancing substances, it's almost, impossible, So yeah, I think you're definitely right there. Is it have you so just to kind of pivot off of that, you're a natural athlete. I've had a couple of people that come on to claim to be so. Have you ever, majority of are not natural. Have you ever thought of like going down the dark side, so to speak?
I haven't, and honestly, I don't even really consider it a dark side. I just know for me, like, this isn't my career. I'm not making money off of this.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, I'm spending more money than making. But for something that's going to be probably in the spectrum of life, for something that's going to be a small fraction of my life, to me, it's not worth it.
Right.
Especially since I went into it with a health and fitness mindset. But the reason why I say it's not the dark side is because either way, you have to put in the work. Like I tell people all the time, I'm like, it doesn't matter if people are on gear or not. Like, you still have to work out. You still have to diet. So people are still putting in the same amount of work. Just for me, I guess I just enjoy doing the work and I'm okay with it taking longer.
Right.
And once again, going back to like the whole health and fitness aspect, like that's why I got into this. This is just another level of that to me, and another level of being an athlete that just for me, it's not ever been something that I've considered.
Sure. No, I mean, and that makes sense. And I get where you're coming from. I mean, no matter what the situation is, a lot of times people will view it as, oh, well, you're taking, gear. So you must, not. And this usually applies to people that aren't in, the fitness industry. Most people kind of understand it, but that are in our industry, but people outside will think, oh, well, if you're taking something, then you're not like really putting in the work. And that's not really the case. However, I mean, it does give you an advantage, but I do get where you're coming from as far as the health purpose of, because no matter what the situation is, taking exogenous like substances will, can have a negative effect on your health. And, there's a big, of course, there's like huge debates over, over this. This is a very like hotly debated topic. It's always has been.
I was actually listening to another podcast that was talking about it, and it was like, it was saying how you could run gear all you want, but if you don't have the genetic makeup for it, like someone like Chris Bumstead, like someone may not, and I'm not claiming whatever he does, but someone isn't going to look like him if they followed the same exact protocol as him, from diet to exercise to like supplements. It ultimately sometimes just boils down to genetics. So I'm like, like you said, it's such a hot topic right now. And I think with like Sean Roden and all that, like I know a lot of people have really started like more or less looking into and having conversations about it.
Right. And I think the issue that a lot of people were pointing to with regard to Sean Roden, because, well, like, a few years back, Dallas McCarver, right, passed away, and people were like, well, he's a mass monster and so forth. And then Sean Roden passes away, and people often viewed him as being more like streamlined. And that's streamlined in our eyes. In reality, Sean Roden was, also a gigantic man. I mean, he was Mr. Olympia, right? So it's like the situation is that there, these medications were originally created for, therapy, and the doses that are being used in fitness are way above that. So there's no studies done. It would be considered unethical. So, so we're basically just kind of seeing, what happens. So in this
I will say, I do feel like a lot more athletes are being a lot more open about it too, and open about like their processes and stuff. So, I mean, kind of like a huge pivot, but I appreciate it because it kind of, I don't want to say it levels the playing field, but it brings awareness to the different types of athletes that are out there and the types of work that you can put into achieving these
Sure.
goals. So
Sure. No, absolutely. And yeah, absolutely, to your point about genetics being the, you know, the really the catalyst for the physiques that, you know, you see. Because I was listening, like you, I was listening to I think it was Greg Doucette, and often he points out the fact that majority of the people that are taking gear, you would not know it because they look terrible, you know. And so it's like the people that you see that look like immaculate, they're just, they might be taking some, but they also have extremely high level of
yeah,
genetics that, you know, facilitate that look. So
yeah, yeah.
for
I
sure.
agree.
So what, you know, what's in the future for you?
So I actually just started a coaching business myself. Uh, Fit is the name of it.
Okay.
So I have always wanted to do it. I got my NASM personal trainer certification, and I'm working on the nutrition specialist certification now.
Oh,
So
congrats. Yeah.
finally got that up and running.
Mhm.
It's been, like I said, a lifelong dream of mine to kind of be a coach. It was kind of my plan B to physician assistant school, because I was like, oh, if this doesn't work out, like maybe I'll start going down this avenue. And of course, they're
Mhm.
both happening at the same time. So I was like, well, now I really got to get this launched and going. So I just started that like within the last 3 weeks. I officially had my first client. So excited to start kind of getting into the coaching world a little bit myself
Awesome.
for lifestyle. Maybe eventually competitors one day, but obviously, you know, you got to start at the bottom
Mhm.
and then work your way up. And then on top of it, my graduate program is starting at the end of August.
So
So
you've got a full plate coming up, pretty
yeah,
much.
yeah, that, and I'm in prep. So I'm 10 weeks out for my first show. So my husband's always like, oh, you always put too much on your plate. And I'm like, that's just how I function. So
So
yeah.
do you know that you're going to be that busy when you're putting stuff on your plate, or do you just put it on and then realize, oh, that's quite a lot?
I don't know if I ever had the realization that it's ever a lot, but I just kind of like, I like to stay busy. So
Mhm.
I just start doing all these little projects. And then eventually I realize I've got like 5 or 6 projects going at once. And I'm like, oh, I'm running out of time. So
So what show are you doing?
my first show will be the NPC Lehigh Valley in Allentown, PA.
Okay. And are you gonna hit a few shows this year, or what's the
Yeah,
plan?
so I'm slated right now to do 3.
Mhm.
So Lehigh Valley will be May 28th. And then that's going to kind of be like my warm up show. I have to re-nationally qualify because it's been too long since my last national show.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we decided to choose that show. It has a good judging panel. It'll kind of get those pre-stage jitters out, won't be as like high stress, and I should be conditioned to take first or second place and get that national qualification, and
Yeah.
then get judges feedback, and then go right into the DC Pro Am in June
Mhm.
because of the judging panel, and try to shoot for a good placing there, and then just peak back to back for junior nats in Chattanooga.
Well, you'll be close to me, Chattanooga. I'm in Nashville,
Okay,
Tennessee,
yeah,
so it's almost like 3 hours away.
yeah.
Yeah. So you said judging panel a couple of times. Is that something that you kind of like keep an eye on?
So this will be the first year that we really kept an eye on it and had more of a strategy with shows.
Mhm.
When I first started working with my new coach, I originally told him that this was just going to be a hobby. I was like,
Mhm.
I just want to do a bigger show than what I did my first year, and that's that. And then I really got into it. I was like, no, I want to do nationals. So 2020 was my first ever appearance in the national circuit. And like I said, when I got off stage, I was like, how do I get a first call out?
Mhm.
So I think this year, now that we're treating it more like, okay, well, you want to go to nationals and you want to place well, then we need a strategy. So
Right.
this is why this year we're kind of paying attention to like judging panels and caliber of show, and how I measure up to a different caliber of athletes. Because in 2018 and 2020, my regional show was the NPC Natural Maryland, and it's a fairly smaller show. Still good judges, but definitely when you look at that show compared to like the class shows or some of the bigger named regional shows, my little regional show just didn't really, I don't think it prepared me well as an athlete for what to expect at the national level.
I see.
Which I don't think you'll ever really know what to expect at the national level until you get there.
Sure.
But it was truly eye-opening for me when I competed for the first time at nationals. I was like, oh, like these girls are way muscular than I am.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a strategy we're using this year.
Yeah, that seems smart because, you know, a lot of it is like your placement, you know, depends on your judges and then depends on the people that are there. And so, you know, you really want to have a good strategy so you can hit the right show, so you can place right, so you can then move on to the next shows.
Yeah.
And obviously, as you're doing that, you're developing yourself too, so you're getting better and better.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you're attacking it from all different, you know, angles, so to speak.
And I think it helps get your face out there too when you're in a competition season. Not that I think that they're like, oh, well, if you get in front of this judge and they see you at this show, like,
right,
it isn't in. I think it's more of, you go to a show, you have a judging panel, they tell you what improvements to make, because even the Olympians are being told what they need to improve on.
Right.
And then you go to the next show and you maybe have some crossover in judges, and then they see that you took their feedback and you made improvements, and hopefully you made the right improvements, and then your placing moves up. So I think it helps to get in front of judges and get in front of good judges and show them like, I'm taking your feedback and I'm applying it and I'm making those changes. If you can from show to show. I mean, if your feedback is, oh, you have to build muscle, well then
that's going to be
you're
tough
not going to do that in a week. But,
right. It's more like if you're, you know, if your feedback is that you need to bring in like a little tighter conditioning, or your water, you know, you have holding a little more water than you need to, those things you can change. But of course, if you're going to add like 5 pounds of muscle, I mean, that's, you know, that's not going to help you much.
Like I said, it's a new thing for us to do this year, but I like it that that's kind of our strategy this year.
Yeah.
And to kind of get in front of different calibers. So
yeah. And I mean, it is a subjective sport. I mean, you know, you can't take that away. We don't want to, some people go like, when they talk about it, they talk about it only in the sense of, oh, it's all politics, and others will never mention, you know, politics being involved at all. I think it's kind of somewhere in the middle, you know, because it is a subjective show, sport. There's other subjective sports. I mean, we can think of like figure skating and other, you know, so it's not uncommon in the athletic world, you know.
I feel like especially in bikini, because at one point they did have published, I don't know if it's still on like NBC News Online, but back when I first started, they literally had like a pie chart, and there was a small sliver of the pie chart that is dedicated to overall appearance. And that comes down to your hair, your makeup, your nails, your shoes. And so I know like my husband and a couple of people that I talked to, they're like, well, it really shouldn't matter what your hair looks like. And I said, well, think of it from like especially bikini, it's more of an entry level for the females. And the whole standard of the look is a feminine athletic look.
Right.
So part of that does come down to just your overall look. Like, do you have the look of what people are looking for? It's no different than like, in my opinion, to like a Miss America pageant. Like, does this person look like they play the part? So
sure.
Like,
and even right. No, I completely understand where you're coming from. But even if you look at like, let's take the most muscular division, right? Let's say women's bodybuilding, right? Even they, you know, you can tell that they're putting effort into how their hair looks and everything. Now, I mean, obviously there's way more you know, weight on their physique as far as like the muscle mass and all that. They're more judged like men are, but still, I mean, you know, it makes a difference, right? It stands out, you know. So I understand where your husband is coming from, because it is supposed to be a, you know, muscle show, you know, but in that particular division, yeah, the way you present yourself is going to play way more of a factor than some other divisions. So
Yeah.
for sure. So you said that when you went to like the nationals, that you were surprised about the level of muscle that the bikini girls have been bringing, at least at that time. What do you think about now? Do you feel like they're getting more muscular? You feel like it's kind of evened out?
I think that the hardness of athletes has definitely, I think in 2020, it was like how muscular girls were, and it was a very hard look.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think now, especially with Jen winning the Olympia, has definitely softened a lot of girls' looks. And now, people are saying Laura Lee is up for the Olympia title this coming year. So I think
Who is it? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Laura Lee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think from when I competed in 2020 to now, you're really kind of seeing that shift of getting away from like that hard vascular look to that more feminine. Like I always try to my funny like bodybuilding references. Like if you think of like Baywatch and you think of like girls in bikinis, like that's kind of like what it is for bikini bodybuilding. Is you want this just feminine, beautiful girl who doesn't look dried out or hard or too muscular. Like it's just
right.
like it's hard to explain what it is, but when you see it, you're like, that's it. Like Laura Lee, she showed up at the Arnold and I was like, she looks great. She looks amazing. I was like, I don't know what exactly it is, but it's that.
So what's interesting, I think, about bikini too is that, and this is a common topic when I talk to girls in bikini in that division, the bikini division, is that it's such a wheel of competitors winning. It's never with men you have the same person winning for 8 years. And of course I'm talking about the Olympia level. And it's uncommon to have somebody like Dexter Jackson to just win one Olympia and no others, right? That's rare. And so, but in bikini, it's rare to have more than one or two, because it's just so many girls. I hate to use the word they look similar, but I feel like a lot of girls are attaining the look that they're looking for. So it's like, so then you're like you really have to differentiate between them, So I don't know. I think
it's so hard to do.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's so hard to do. I don't know how the judges do it, because you're literally splitting hairs.
Right. And
how they showed up that day.
Right. And I mean, it makes sense because at the elite level, I guess you would have the highest level of athletes. So you would expect them to come in, as close to perfect as possible. But it's tough. I mean, I think like Ashley Caldwell won 3. And I think if I'm not mistaken, that's the record. I don't think anyone's won more than that. So, yeah. So, and that's not a lot. So, yeah, it's interesting. Have you ever thought about like moving to a different division, or you don't think you have enough muscle?
I don't think so. I know like when wellness first came about, like it hadn't even made its NPC debut yet. I tend to build on my legs very easily. So I know like my improvement season, I had to spend a lot of time trying not to train my quads and my glutes because I build muscle so easily, because I didn't want to grow out of the bikini division. And now that wellness has made its debut, I was like, yeah, that's not really it looks good for the girls that can pull it off, but that's not really a look for me. So I think I will be bikini probably all my life.
When you say
love the sassiness, I guess, that bikini has to offer.
when you say that that's not the look for you, are you referring to like that's not the look that you would like to have, or you think you'll be stuck in between divisions, like you won't be big enough?
No, it's just not the look that I think I would want to have, and I think I would have to spend a lot of time trying to maintain it. I definitely think if I spent the time to build there, I could get there. But with just how the standard is currently, And, you know, the standards are changing all the time in all the
Sure.
divisions. I just think for me, I would have to A, work really hard to maintain that kind of muscle. And B, I don't naturally have that shape that where I'm like more heavy bottom. I have the potential of being able to grow into it, but
I see.
I just think I fit better, and the type of body image I have for myself outside of the competitive world is not what
Mhm.
it would be if it were wellness.
Yeah, that's a big thing too, right? Is because as we talked about earlier, bodybuilding is so intertwined with who you are outside as well. It's not like you're playing soccer and you're one person, like you're so athletically gifted on the field, but then you step out and one doesn't have to do with the other. It's like
Mhm.
in bodybuilding, it's all interconnected because it's you.
Yeah.
So, envisioning of how you want to look like is so important because I often hear um, people say, "Well, this judge wants this, or this judge wants that," and while I think there's merit to that, especially if you're pursuing, winning, you want to go in line with what they're looking for.
Mhm.
It's like there has to be a balance too with what you want for yourself, and
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea, good idea because once this competitive thing is over and it's over for everybody at some
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
you still have to live in that body. So,
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like it's a good point to make. Like a lot of competitors get caught up in like their identity as a competitor,
mhm,
because like you said, it's so intertwined with your off season. So I just don't want to get to a point where being a competitor is my only identity. And I think, like you said, everyone has to hang the heels up eventually. So
right.
for me, I would rather just, work hard for it now. And then when I decide that, this isn't what I want to do anymore, I
Mhm.
have a physique and a lifestyle that I can fall into that
Sure.
it would be like missing a beat.
Sure. And I don't think you'll ever stop, training. You would just,
I don't think so
stop
either.
competing, but
Yeah.
it's.
Yeah, my husband and I were actually just talking about it today, like about being in school and how much time that's going to take once I start. And I said, I'm always going to work out. I mean, I'm not
Right.
planning on competing while I'm in school, but I've always worked out. I will always work out. So, I mean, that's
Right.
just a part of my life that I'm not willing and won't ever be willing to give up because it
Yeah.
makes me feel good. I mean, I would, if it didn't feel good, I wouldn't do it. Right.
Right, absolutely. And it will also, help you to just get re-energized and, go on to the next. You feel good, you'll sleep better,
Yeah.
your class, you will reflect well in your school and your grades, it's all intertwined. Um, you know, as we mentioned, my wife is in nursing school and it's very, very busy. But even with that, I mean, she might not work out as much as she did when she wasn't,
Yeah.
but she still finds time to, to train. And it's so important,
Yeah.
because you can tell the difference.
And when people ask me, like, well, why do you do this? Like, why do you like it? And I said, I almost feel like it's made me a better person in a way.
Hmm.
Like, I'm much more disciplined now. When I set my mind to do something, I do it. And on top of it, I just have a routine. Like,
Right.
well, I mean, getting too over routine could always not be a good thing, but to have a routine and be able to work on myself and kind of challenge myself in that way, I think just makes me a better person outside of this realm where like at work I can put myself into like more uncomfortable situations and force myself to grow.
Absolutely. So are you a routine person? Like you function off of routine?
I think so. I
Mhm.
would like to think I'm spontaneous and I like
Mhm.
to be spontaneous, but I think I automatically revert back to like creature of habit and I like having goals. I like, which is probably why I have 5 or 6 projects going on at all times. But like for me, prep is super easy. When we start prep, it's like it is so routine and I fall right into it and I feel good and I have something to work towards.
Mhm.
So definitely
Yeah,
routine.
I'm that same way too. I have lists upon lists. I make lists, I check them off, it's I heard this interesting quote and they said that uh, so dreams are dreams until you write them down, and then once you write them down, they become goals. So I thought
Yeah.
that was an interesting way of putting it, because for me, in my mind, that's kind of how it feels. Like I can think of something, but I can forget about it very quickly. But
Yes.
once I write it down, it's real,
Yes.
Um,
Yes. I agree.
so, you started this new coaching, you're going to school, you're going to be very busy. Are you planning to continue like coaching while you're in school, or are you going to put that on the hold as well?
That's actually the goal, is to kind of keep up with it. So my platform is mostly online. I did kind of throw in there like an offer to train people one-on-one as like
Mhm.
a personal trainer, because I have a home gym,
Mhm.
fully equipped. I mean, I don't have like a leg press and stuff like that,
Right,
but
right.
I have like Olympic bars, squat rack, cable machine. So I'm putting the offer out there to train in person, for like an hour session, but with how busy my schedule is, I
Mm.
didn't want to make it my permanent thing. So I'm hoping to keep my platform completely online, and then maybe have a few clients. And instead of having to like go to a brick and mortar to work if I'm in
Yeah,
school, that'll kind of be like a little supplemental income, for me to have, to help with
sure,
groceries and gas, and
sure.
pay for my own coaching for myself. So
Right, right. Well, that makes sense. And you would be a good person to go to too. You know what you're doing. You've been, you've got to a point where your physique is competing against others to that high, high level. So especially if you're doing lifestyle, a lot of times people in lifestyle just need direction,
yeah,
and I think you'll be way equipped to do that.
yeah. Well, and
So
that's what, I tell like my friends and stuff. They're like, "Oh, I don't want to do what you do," and I said, "Well, that's not what I'm
mhm.
coaching people to do." And I always tell people to remember, like, I started at that point. I started at the point of like, I just wanted to be healthy. I wanted to know what to eat and when to eat, and I wanted someone to give me a workout.
Mhm.
And it's just taken off. Like, I'm on this end of the spectrum now.
Right.
So my goal as a coach is to help people get to that middle ground, to where they can live life, enjoy life, do all the fun things, go out, hang out with friends and family, but keeping their goals in mind and keeping them important, and working on themselves. Because I think far too often people get so busy in
Mhm.
life and in the demands of life that we always put ourselves, I feel like, on the back burner.
Sure.
And I think when it comes to health, fitness, and nutrition, that's always the first to go. I mean, the
Mhm.
first barrier is always time. And so I hope to take people who started like I once did and just teach them about macros and how to track them and how to flexible diet,
Mhm.
because I think there's a lot of stuff out there in the world that's not beneficial, and
Absolutely.
people just perpetually diet and they're like, oh, I can't, like, when they say to me, I don't know how you do what you do. Well, I want to teach you how I do what I do, because if I can open up your mind to it and open up your mind to realize, like, oh, I can have my cake and eat it too. I can't tell
Yeah.
you how many times people are like, oh, well, you don't eat burgers, you don't eat this, you don't eat that. And I'm like,
Right.
why not though?
Right.
Like, my friends the other day, just it kind of like irritated me. They were like, oh, you eat bread? I was like, yeah, I eat bread. Like, it's food.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I can help people get to a point where they're not like, oh, I can't have bread and I can't have cake,
Mhm.
and not that I want people to just eat bad food all the time, but
Right.
I, like, how can you truly ever live your life if you're constantly separating health, fitness, and nutrition and playtime outside of that?
Right. I think you've brought up a good point. There's one, that there's the barrier of time, which is the first barrier, right? But then you have the barrier of misinformation. And there's so much
So
misinformation. And people use gimmicks to try to sell, their diet plans and so forth. And they try to make things extremely complicated. And, it's very hard. Like, I'm glad that I'm at this point right now, because if I was getting into this, at this point in my life, it would be so difficult. You wouldn't know where to look. And it's tough. It's tough. That's why you never want to make fun of people that
Yeah,
are just getting started, because you have to start somewhere.
somewhere.
But, and
And
so
you're just starting.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think you've got a good, good plan, good idea. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, or wanted to either get you for, training, or more podcasts or anything else, what would be the best way for them to do that?
So they can email me at biconfit@gmail.com. That's BICON at gmail.com. Or I have a coaching page, which is VicoFit with 2 underscores on Instagram that they can follow, or they can follow me on my personal like fitness account at VAK19 and DM
Awesome.
me on there, or send me an email, and I can get them all set up and squared away and get after their goals.
Awesome. Great. That sounds amazing. And guys, I'm going to go ahead and link everything at the bottom of this video to make it easy for you. So all you have to do is just click on it, and it'll direct you right to Vicky's pages and everything that you'll ever need to, to get in contact. So Vicky, I really appreciate you taking the time, to coming on. I know you're very busy with so many things going on, but
Thanks for having me, though. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. You take care. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Bye.